We're live. Hey, we're live. Welcome, video watchers.
Live.
Whether you're live or watching later. For you, you're watching now. And that's all that matters.
I hope they're alive.
I hope they aren't. Yeah, I hope we don't have anyone not live. Not alive.
You can now share Dropbox roster.
Ghosts.
It's all live to them.
Yeah. So I've been mentioning my experience with the transition from Verizon Fios to Frontier Fios, and I just want to note, got a call from a Frontier support person this morning. Wonderful person named Bobby. Bounced my ports, if you know what that means, and got me back up to speed, and then said, look, I know you said it's been fluctuating, so if it goes back down, give me a call, gave me his extension. So fingers crossed, things are fixed.
Coolio.
Yeah. And that is my Frontier Communications update. Brought to you by me, not Frontier Communications. All right, are you guys ready?
Let's do it.
Why not? We all made time to be here.
We're here.
We ought to do it. All right, here we go.
0.02% of the Daily Tech News Show were brought to you by me. If you would like to decrease my already meager equity, go to dailytechnewsshow.com/support.
This is the Daily Tech News for Monday, April 11th, 2016. I'm Tom Merritt. Joining me today, Ms. Allison Sheridan, host of NosillaCast. Welcome back, Allison.
Hey, Tom, how's it going today?
Doing well. Thank you for stepping in for the Veronica Belmont Game of Thrones red carpet post-day hangover.
Ooh la la.
Yeah, she did a great job. I don't know if anybody saw the Facebook Live. You can go back and watch it in the archive, but she got to hug Arya Stark.
Wow. Wow. I'm jealous.
Right. I was pretty jealous too. But Allison's here today. We're very happy to have Allison here because we are going to recreate an excellent conversation about virtual reality we had at one of our LA meetups with Travis Falstad, software developer and consultant. Travis, welcome to the show. You've worked with VR.
Thank you so much for having me. Yeah, I've worked in the space since pre-Oculus Rift. So building flight simulators for a major aircraft manufacturer and getting to know a lot of the use cases and some of the constraints with really expensive hardware a few years ago.
So what we're going to do is Allison sat down at the meetup, Allison, and you basically said, like, okay, besides gaming, why should I care, right? And we have so many people who are saying, I'm tired of VR. I don't care about it. It's just for games. We're going to try to see if maybe there's other things.
Yeah, prove it, Travis.
Right on. I'll do my best.
That's coming up in our discussion section. Let's start off with the headlines. When Google Fiber launched in Kansas City, one of the things it did to encourage neighborhoods to sign up was offered free 5 megabit per second internet to anyone who paid for the construction. It was a $300 one-time fee, so you pay $300 once, you get free 5 megabits per second internet for life. Google Fiber is now dropping that incentive as they have built out enough, apparently. In its place, new subscribers can get 100 megabits per second for $50 a month with no construction fee, as long as they agree to a year contract. Gigabit Fiber is $70 a month with no construction fee if they agree to a year contract. Google Fiber is also broadening its efforts to connect underserved neighborhoods in Kansas City for free.
That's pretty cool. It seems like they've got enough of it now. Can I have it?
Yeah, I feel like, because they still have the $300 and free internet for life deals in Provo, I think in Austin as well. Yeah, we would like it to come to our cities, please.
You in particular would like that, right?
Yeah, I wouldn't mind. Wouldn't mind a little gigabit. Definitely.
Yeah, that would be fun. Well, Nikkei Asian Review reports Hitachi unveiled a robot Friday that will compete with SoftBank's Pepper in the area of customer service. The Emu 3 is smaller and faster than Pepper and expected to hit the market in 2018. Pepper went on sale last June, targeted at elderly assistants in households, though a Microsoft partnership will sell to retail. Emu 3 will be sold to corporations. This thing is awful cute for a corporation, isn't it?
Yeah, and it can actually pick itself back up off the floor, which I don't think Pepper can do. So yeah, I guess what they're saying is we want people to use these in like tour. The one they showed off was a tourist situation. Like you show up at the airport or the train station and say, "Oh, how do I get to Harajuku? How do I get to the Shibuya district?" And then it says, "Here's how you get there." And it can respond to natural language. It can roll around on its own.
It can roll around fast on its own.
Yeah, it's faster than Pepper too. You're right.
6 kilometers per hour, which I think is almost 4 miles an hour, 3.7 miles an hour. That's fast. I mean, you just picture this little thing flying by.
It does seem like they're trying to create these friendly robots. These are not battle bots.
Yeah, she's adorable.
In different niches. So they're like, okay, the Pepper one is meant to make people feel comfortable, maybe in a retail situation, maybe in an elderly assistant situation. Whereas the MU3, which by the way needs a different name, that one seems to be meant for being helpful, like being direct consumer, like customer support sort of thing.
Yeah, but she still is pretty cute and short though. Looks like the picture shows a woman kneeling and it comes up to maybe her shoulders. So it's pretty tiny. You're going to have to lean down to talk to it.
You don't want it to be threatening.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, 7 feet tall, towering over, going, "What do you want?"
An accidentally published page on Tmall gave us an early look at Amazon's Kindle Oasis that is expected to be announced later this week. It has a large bezel on one side, a 300 pixels per inch screen, weighs 131 grams, is 3.4 millimeters at its thinnest, 8.5 millimeters at its thickest. Page also described a rechargeable battery case that attaches with magnets and comes in 3 colors. The case provides up to 20 months of standby time. No mention on whether this is waterproof, which a lot of people had expected.
I'm going to reserve judgment until I see it in person, but at first blush, it's kind of chunky looking to me.
Yeah, I think the case makes it feel a little chunkier. I'm curious what it looks like in person.
Yeah, I mean, that's a third of an inch thick on the thick side, and it's only thick on one side. And the big buttons, I don't know. I was curious looking forward to this to see what problem was left to solve. Because I upgraded from the Kindle Paperwhite to the Kindle Voyage, and while the paper is supposed to look better, I can't really tell the difference. I mean, we put two of them side by side, and Steve and I tried to figure out if we could really see it. And I don't know, maybe our eyes are too old, but it didn't look that different to us. So I'm not sure what more it needs to do.
I think it's interesting that we're still seeing the e-ink type screens coming out of Amazon. I personally have just switched over to reading on whatever screen is around.
Really?
But I know a lot of people don't like that. They're like, no, that makes my eyes tired. And so these e-ink type screens are still working for people.
My reason for the Kindle is that I can't do anything else when I'm reading on the Kindle. I mean, I can look up a
it keeps
word.
You focused. Yeah.
I can't. I mean, because I will instantly go, "Hey, what's Twitter doing? Hey, hey, there's an instant message on Facebook."
You get a notification or something.
Yeah.
Well, we got another product from HTC got leaked out. It's leaked product day.
Oh, yeah. Whoops, sorry, got lost. HTC is expected to announce its new flagship HTC 10 phone at an event tomorrow, but a promo video leaked online gave an early sneak peek. The video shows a phone much like the HTC A9 with much chamfering of edges, gotta love some chamfers, and a camera bump similar to the iPhone, and it includes USB-C connectivity.
And again, we don't know price, shipping. This is not an official announcement. It's just a leaked video. And it honestly doesn't look that different. So I'm not sure I'm curious what the big selling point will be for this. Probably the camera would be my guess.
Chamfers.
Yes, and all the chamfers. Although we've seen some chamfering. I've seen some chamfering. You've seen some chamfering in your time.
Yeah, I think the iPhone 5 had chamfers, but they do make pretty hardware though. I'm not going to lie. It's a good looking device.
BlackBerry CEO John Chen told Abu Dhabi newspaper The National that BlackBerry will launch 2 mid-range Android phones this year. Chen didn't give details on release dates or anything, but said one of the phones will come with a physical keyboard and the other will be all touchscreen. Chen said the $700 BlackBerry Priv, their Android phone to date, quote, was too high-end a product. In other words, too pricey. During the 3 months to the end of March, the Priv sold 600,000 units, which was below the 850,000 that analysts had anticipated.
I know that doesn't come in anywhere near iPhone or Samsung sales, but that sounds like pretty phenomenal sales figures for BlackBerry in my book.
Well, yeah, it's all about analysts' expectations, right? Whether it's disappointing or not. But if you're BlackBerry, You just want to sell some units. And I think that's what John Chen's saying is like, look, this was too expensive. We sold enough of them at that price point that if we can come in at a lower price point, we think we can actually sell some phones.
Well, okay. Ars Technica notes that the U.S. Court of Appeals for the Fifth Circuit overturned a decision that halted the Mississippi Attorney General's investigation into how Google deals with links to illegal things, including copyright violations. I love these double negatives. It overturned the halted decision, so now it's unhalted.
Yes.
The appeals court noted Google could decline to comply with the subpoena, so didn't need injunctive relief given by the lower court. The MPAA has worked closely with Mississippi Attorney General Jim Hood on the case. The MPAA is pushing to strengthen the DMCA and focusing on Google in particular.
Yeah, the MPAA is on a campaign right now, partly to negotiate better fees with services, but partly to strengthen the Digital Millennium Copyright Act. Their slogan for it is instead of notice and takedown, which is the way the DMCA works. You send a notice saying we think this is infringing and the company takes it down. They want it to be notice and stay down. So in other words, we'll send a notice that this is infringing and the service should make sure that nothing similar to it ever goes back up, which can sound reasonable if you don't think about the internet. You're like, oh, well, if you told a company it should go down, well, then it should stay down. That's absolutely right. But, you know, you're talking about something like YouTube or even Google, the search engine, or Bing, the search engine. The way the internet works, links come and go all the time. And the whole point of safe harbor in the DMCA is that companies shouldn't have to be policing all of that all the time if we want a functioning internet.
Yeah, I don't see how this is workable at all.
Singapore's carrier StarHub is partnering with Huawei to bring gigabit LTE to Singapore in the spring of 2017. The 4.5G service, which promises to roll out in the central business district of Singapore, doesn't have any devices that can take advantage of it yet, but there's still time. StarHub is currently rated as the world's fastest LTE operator with average speeds of 38 megabits per second already. So they just want to get obnoxiously fast in Singapore.
Holy cow, that sounds fantastic. Well, I guess if they build it, they will come.
Yeah, and think about it. Like we're getting 5G service within the next 5 years in most places. They're already talking about having it in 2018 in South Korea, I think. Verizon and AT&T have been working on their rollouts here in the United States. So I think, you know, I think we're going to be living in this world eventually. Whether it, you know, gets to Singapore in the central business district first or not is a bit of bragging rights, really.
Remind me again, how fast is 5G?
It's faster than a gigabit per second.
I need it.
Or capable of that. I mean, these things are always like, well, it's capable of this, but the implementation is actually less. So
sure, I can be sitting next to my wireless router, but I don't get those speeds, right?
No, I know.
I love this next story. This is the perfect internet story, why the internet's wonderful. Reddit user Midwestern Housewives posted a discovery of a visual clue in Mike Tyson's Punch-Out game for the NES. This game came out in 1987. It turns out a face in the crowd will duck in the second piston Honda or Bade Bull fight. If a punch is timed with the duck, the opposing fighter will be taken out with one punch.
Yeah, and Ball Bull, by the way, is apparently really hard. I never played Punch-Out, which it was launched as Mike Tyson's Punch-Out, and then they removed it and just called it Punch-Out. I don't know if it was like licensing or whatever, but here you go. You can finally beat Bald Bull.
That is so. I just love this that they found it 30 years later.
Yeah. It seems like I'm seeing more of these types of stories where people are finding hidden Easter eggs in older video games. It's like video game archaeology. It's pretty cool.
They went digging, huh?
Tech in Asia reports that I, spelled AI, Alibaba's artificial intelligence, that's not confusing, predicted all the winners for the Chinese TV talent show I'm a Singer. Alibaba Cloud's chief scientist for artificial intelligence, Dr. Mingwan Li, said after the show, the results demonstrated that AI is making significant progress to understand human emotions and how people make decisions. Dr. Wan Li had previously worked on IBM's AI Watson. AI made its predictions based on data culled from social media, song popularity, and contestant ability. It's kind of a squishier goal than winning a game of Go, don't you think?
Yeah, that's a whole different thing than that. In reality, this is just taking a bunch of data and predicting a result. What I didn't get from the article was how soon after all of the data did it come up with the decision versus the decision actually coming out?
Well, yeah.
Instead, everybody's tweets and everybody's emotions, you're going, okay, more people said A than B than A.
Yeah, I wonder about that too. I also would like to know a little more than I could find in the short time, admittedly, that I looked at this story, about how the judges picked the winners and whether they knew what the predictions would be. Did that affect their decisions in any way?
Good point. They were looking at the exact same data.
I'm going to assume that because this is Dr. Manwan Lee and he has worked in the industry and he's a respectable researcher, that didn't happen. I'm gonna jump to that conclusion for this story. But yeah, you want to make sure about that sort of thing too.
Yeah. Well, Tesla is voluntarily recalling 2,700 Model X vehicles to fix a flaw in the third row seat. Strength tests ahead of a European release found that the locking hinge could fail, causing the seat to go down in a crash. Owners will be contacted to schedule replacement over the next 5 weeks. Yikes.
Not sure how many Model X owners we have in the audience, but that's kind of a public service announcement. And keep an eye out for that recall.
If you do have a Tesla, by the way, a buddy of mine has a Model S, and he had a problem with it, and they came with a flatbed and picked it up and dropped off a replacement car in the meantime.
You mean like when you go and you have a problem with your phone and the store just like says, yeah, you know what, we're just going to give you a new phone. We'll give you all the data. They can do that with your car.
Yeah, except they bring it to your house. They brought it to him.
That's amazing.
They gave him one of the newer models that had more of the cooler automatic driving stuff. Doggone it if he didn't turn around, trade that car in and buy one of those new ones. I mean, it was perfect.
Yep. Smart move.
Yeah.
Finally, Strategy Analytics put out a report predicting global revenues from VR headsets will reach $895 million this year. Oculus, HTC, and Sony will account for 77% of that money, while only making up 13% of the 12.8 million units estimated to ship. The rest will be made up of lower-cost smartphone-based VR systems, things like Gear VR, Cardboard, etc. So
what is this good for anyway? I mean, games, right?
Yeah, we're going to find that out here in a second. Thanks to PC Guy 8088, Abatuela Condolce, and everyone who submitted stories from our subreddit. Submit your own stories and vote on them at dailytechnewsshow.reddit.com, and that is a look at the headlines. So yeah, we're gonna make a lot of money, or we're not, but some people are gonna make a lot of money off VR this year, selling headsets. And we had a story today, and Gadget was pointing to about a company called Medical Realities is going to host the first live VR stream of surgery on April 14th. It's a tumor removal surgery. They'll use Google Cardboard and their own app on a 1-minute delay in case something untoward happens during the surgery, but it's a fairly routine surgery. And they're trying to promote using VR for surgical instruction, training, etc. So that leads us right into, like, there you go. There is an example of a non-gaming VR use. Like I said at the top of the show, lots of people saying like, VR, really? We're going to talk about that again? It's for gamers. I don't care about that. And Allison, you were expressing a similar opinion at our meetup with Travis, where you're like, look, what's up with VR?
Yeah, I am not a visionary by any means. I mean, I'm the person who said that when the 512K iMac came out, we would never need a bigger screen than that. I said we would never need color. I said there would never be undo in a CAD program. So I'm clearly not a visionary by any means. So I need people to help me see that vision of the future. And I get the VR is cool, but why? What real life problems is it going to solve for us? And Travis, you had some ideas.
Yeah, so I think there are a few things. First of all, when we were having that discussion, we talked about defense, we talked about healthcare, we talked about medicine, and a lot of those ideas were really good then, and people got excited, even back in the early 90s. I think what has changed now is it's a matter of scale, and some of the things that I pointed out then, if we wanted, in the blog post I used as an example the Aerosmith video that came out in, I think, 94. And that was a really cool VR example. It wasn't functional, but it was an example of things that people could be excited about. You could go, have an experience with another person, but that wasn't a game either. That was an example of immersion and experience. So my point is that we have game engines, asset stores, 3D model repositories, smartphones, high-speed internet, online payments, high-resolution mobile displays, content management systems, miniature and cheap sensors. So I won't keep going up through that list, but all of that stuff has come to fruition in the last 25 years. And so now I really do believe, for example, I know you guys talked about this on the show, but the Ricoh Theta S, I've lived in LA 20 years, but I was able to hold it up driving with my top down and take a 360-degree video and put it on YouTube and share it with my sister and give her an example of what my life is like. So
I guess the idea of a shared experience or an individual experience that you wouldn't get otherwise, that kind of resonates to me, and I'm picturing Wall-E now, of course. So we're all sitting back in our recliners being fed our milkshakes as we fatten up, and we're watching. I'm pretending that I'm hiking in Kilimanjaro at the time, and that's kind of cool. But those are still entertainment based. What I'm trying to get more into is talk to the defense application. There have been flight simulators for a long time. I worked on one that was a sphere that we wheeled an F-18 simulator into the middle of it, and it projected the imagery on the inside of the dome. Why is this better than that?
So those large domes, and we worked on one as well that was, I think it involved 24 projectors and involved 1 or 2 C-130s if we wanted to deploy it to a theater. And we built a VR application, and I remember, I'll describe how that worked a little bit, but a great contrast in how the technology has changed is one of those people asked us how many C-130s it would take to deploy this to the theater. And I was able to say, it's in this backpack, which...
Okay. So in a way, what we worked on in the old days, that was VR.
Well, I mean, and that's the thing.
VR affordable and small and on a headset instead of in a giant room.
See, and I really do feel that way, but I feel like we're moving along a spectrum from, my StarTAC back in the 90s that I was super excited about, all the way
StarTAC.
Absolutely, all the way through lightweight, transparent. Maybe it's goggles, maybe it's something beyond that provide both AR and VR. So you're able to move displays up from the StarTAC through this 3D immersive experience where you can start to use gesture recognition and that sort of thing. Again, to get beyond just entertainment and sitting back and kind of, one of our potential client that we were working with does tourism. So, if you think about how a tourist destination might want to promote their facility, VR is a great example, 360 video specifically. And I can speak to the flight simulator a little bit. We were able to bring down cost by 95%.
Okay.
And what we weren't able to provide was we weren't able to provide a seat that picked you up and moved you around. So you were still just sitting in an office chair, but we were able to train about 60% of the curriculum. That included compressor failure, landing gear failure, bird strike. We were able to train a bunch of that stuff and give people pretty close to photorealistic environments, all for 5% of the price, and a simulator you could put in a backpack and deploy.
I remember back when I was working on that big simulator, they had there was a big general who didn't believe that these simulators were anything that was gonna actually work, and so we wheeled him out into the cockpit, and they ran the simulation, and it was early, we weren't done with it, and the simulation crashed, and it crashed when the plane was at about a 30-degree angle from rotated to the left, and he got out of the cockpit and fell flat on his face. Because gravity wasn't where it was supposed to be. And it was like, he started signing checks that day. That made a big difference. What about in medical? So this is going to be cool that we can watch somebody do surgery. I don't get how, in the case of surgery, how this is going to be any more interesting. It's not like you're going to want to look behind the surgeon, right? You're going to be looking right where the surgeon's looking. So why would VR add any value to this other than it being neato?
So here, there are a few, and I'll kind of preface this point, again, using mobile as an example. So I think of when I had my StarTAC and I loved it, and there were, I guess around 700 million mobile subscribers around the year 2000. Now we have, I think, 4 or 5 billion, and I think a lot of services like Tinder, 20% of people in China, or of subscribers in China and India and Brazil using ride-sharing service. I don't think we could predict any of those features. Obviously, you know, when I was just excited that my battery lasted, I guess, 8 hours or something on standby. But I think that, you know, when we talk about medical, now we're able to, there are a few use cases that make a lot of sense. If you want to train surgery or use specific use cases in surgery, you can 3D print and instrument robotic surgery controls and provide an environment in, you know, probably a HTC Vive or a Gear VR. You can also allow patients to understand much better what's going on with their body instead of having, you know, the old models where you know, here's your heart and here's a valve. You could actually, yeah, I mean, and we worked with the medical center on a project involving wearables where you could actually run them through imaging, an MRI, and then animate their actual heart. They're wearing a wearable, so now the user can blow up their own organ and look at it operating in 3D and actually see it animated in real time, which would be bad. Yeah.
Okay, so now I start to get into that with, if you're talking about a 3D model that I can spin around and do things with, that makes sense to me. The real-time stuff, like in the surgeon case, you can't go inside the heart because there's no camera inside that heart. That's not really what's going to ever happen in that example.
But you don't have to rely on a camera operator to get all of the angles that you need. If you as a viewer want to say, well, wait a minute, what's happening on the other side of that incision, or what's happening over here, and let me see that from another angle, you can control all of that. That seems like an advantage to me.
And that's where I think there's so much opportunity beyond, you know, we think of 360 video, but when you look at it, I mentioned game engines, you know, when you look at it as a truly digital experience, now you're the master of the world, and you can move around, you can, I mean, everything is editable, I guess, versus just watching a video.
Yeah, when you were putting that camera up out of your car to share your view, the person watching that can see more than you could see while you were in the car, because they can turn around and see the reactions of the people behind you and around the corner and look at it all, and you could only, you know, only look forward.
Exactly.
Maybe I'm getting hung up on specifics of the terminology, because 360 video, I get. That sounds really cool. I understand how there's a lot of different circumstances where that would be really nifty. It's the term VR of putting on a headset that I have to cram my head into, and it's going to hurt my neck. And by the way, my investment advice: invest in companies that are going to build things to help us fix our neck problems. But you know, that's the part that I don't get, is putting on the helmet and being closed off from other people and going off into this other world for something other than a game. And you know, I'm a gamer, I don't want to talk to anybody anyway. That might be great. That I think I need to put those things into one category, not as two separate things.
I think so. I mean, and that's the, you know, I think I agree with you that there's a tremendous amount of hype around VR, and you know, I've had a lot of people make a case to me that, you know, they'll talk about AR or they'll talk about VR, and it's clear that they're very new and don't quite understand it yet. I think that the reality is it's just another piece on that continuum as we move from low immersion, low quality displays up through really immersive experiences that are almost like Matrix-like is the example I would use.
I also like the conversion, the continuum that takes you from that 3D model that you can spin around and do stuff with, all the way down into the 3D printed model that you can take apart still and say, okay, this is where your heart valve is actually messed up. I saw a thing on the new Screensavers. Guy Leo had interviewed a doctor and a mother of a young child who'd had heart surgery, and they made a 3D model of her heart, her actual heart from imaging, and then they gave the little girl her heart on a necklace when it was done.
Wow.
And it was just really cool.
But go ahead, Tom.
No, go ahead, Travis.
But and that's one of the things that I think it's not strictly VR, and it's not, you know, kind of the hype, but it's when the average consumer starts to think about things like 3D models and animation, and they start to understand that these things can be controlled by them and manipulated by them. That to me is kind of the big step that will allow some of these technologies to take hold like they wouldn't have maybe 25 years ago.
Yeah, I like what you're saying about it being a continuum, because I think the thing to remember is VR doesn't do anything you couldn't do on your screen. It actually just makes you able to do it differently, right? So like you're saying, Allison, like you can look at a 360-degree video on your screen and you're a little disconnected from it. You hold it in a mouse and you move it around. In virtual reality, you just turn. Something catches your eye, you just look. And I think you can't really understand exactly what that gets you until you use it. The same way we had apps on flip phones, right? But there was a limit to what they could do and how we would use them, even though they were technically capable of a lot of the same things until we got the iPhone and touchscreens and Android and the ability to use them in a different way.
I did get to wear an Oculus Rift at CES a year ago that Home Depot had, where they walked you through a virtual room, and that was pretty cool. I like the idea of being able to say, okay, if I put this cabinetry in, what would it look like in my house? And that was kind of cool. I don't know.
There's one thing, I mean, to where we are in the space that I think is kind of funny. I have an HTC Vive right here, but I don't have a computer that'll run it. So it just looks nice. You know, I hope to have one soon. But I mean, I think that's a great example kind of for where we are with the technology.
You forgot to buy the $1,000 add-on to it?
Yeah, I was like, oh, the Vive came for free. But yeah, the add-on is more significant.
Well, and that is where we are. This is Gen 1. I think a lot of people are also turned off when they look at these like, well, they're bulky and heavy. You're not wrong, Allison. I need a more expensive computer to run it. You know, what is it good for? Those are all first generation issues with everything that we have. And so, yeah, I mean, the Oculus Rift is apparently a little more comfortable to wear than the HTC Vive, but I wouldn't get either one of them or even the PlayStation VR unless you're just someone who's enthusiastic about adopting technology early, because the second generation and the third generation are going to learn what they're good at and fix the issues that we don't know exist because all the early adopters are using them.
We're also going to need people to work on our brains. A friend of mine's got the first generation, DK1 of the Oculus Rift with a gaming machine, and he said that after he plays a game for like a couple hours, when he takes it off, he says the world is really weird looking. He says it's like hyper 3D and it's upsetting. And he worries about what if his kid wears it. You know, his brain is all old and on plastic now. But what if he puts it on his little kid for a couple hours? Will her reality be changed? You know.
Well, and that transfer, just real quickly, that transfer is one of the things that they're trying to improve with every generation of these.
Well, and I mean, I have to say, there was a point, you know, being owner of a company that builds VR products, when we started working in VR, I remembered Steve Martin's The Jerk. And I remembered what happened to everybody's eyes, and I thought, is this really a liability? Is this, you know, because I'm with you. I wore, you know, I have my gear also sitting right here, and I wore, when I first got it, I wore it for about 2 hours, which certainly killed the phone battery. And when I took it off, the world was different. It was just strange for a little while.
I get the same thing with my Viewmaster, so I'm not sure how permanent that is.
Ding, ding. I actually thought of the exact same example from The Jerk. I was going to do a meme with it where I, you know, showed him with the eyes crossed except an Oculus Rift. I was too lazy to make it.
All right, well, we'll keep this conversation going, folks. Feedback at dailytechnewsshow.com. And TG Stellar's usually pretty good about posting these things in the subreddit if you want to do some commentary in there. Meanwhile, our pick of the day comes from Bruce in Peterborough, Canada, who was listening to our talk about bots, chatbots. And Bruce's pick is the 2015 book by Pedro Domingos, a leading researcher in machine learning, called The Master Algorithm: How the Quest for Ultimate Learning Machine Will Remake Our World. Domingos provides a history of machine learning and describes the 5 different approaches to it and how the holy grail of machine learning is a master algorithm, a single universal learning algorithm that could drive all past, present, and future knowledge and change the world. Bruce says it's a fascinating read for anyone with an interest in AI, and Domingos even provides some resources for those interested in entering the field of machine learning. And all this stuff is tied together, man. Machine learning, bots, AI, and virtual reality. I mean, there's going to be a lot of machine learning applications within the world of VR and augmented reality as well.
I love the picks, by the way, Tom. I get so much out of the picks. I just started watching The Code from yesterday's pick or Friday's pick. Great stuff, great stuff. I think I've read a couple of books that you guys have recommended. This is fun.
Cool. Well, keep the picks coming, folks. Feedback at dailytechnewsshow.com. You can find more picks at dailytechnewsshow.com/picks. A few messages of the day before we go. First one is a voicemail about something that a way to connect an amendment to the U.S. Constitution to the encryption debate.
Hi, Tom and company. This is Meachamus Prime from lovely Huntsville, Alabama. Over the course of this FBI versus Apple catastrophe, I've noticed the arguments the government is using against encryption are eerily similar to the arguments that it uses against public ownership of guns. But this is no coincidence. U.S. International Traffic in Arms regulations, informally known as ITAR, classify cryptography as auxiliary munitions equipment, a component of the general term arms. As such, our right to bear cryptography shall not be infringed as per the Second Amendment to the Constitution of the United States of America. Think about that the next time you use your bank's website.
All right, so I admit that's a stretch. And, I don't want to bring up a debate about guns, but it is an interesting parallel that if encryption is considered to be a munition, would it be covered?
Well, wasn't there a point in time where we weren't allowed to export it?
Yeah, back in the 90s, there was a whole encryption fight in the late 90s. Yeah.
Did they ever characterize it as an arm, though?
I don't know. I hesitate to say they never did, but I don't remember.
I bet they did. Gotta go find that. That's awesome.
Well, and there's a difference between being classified ITAR and actually being constitutionally considered a weapon that falls under Second Amendment protection. But I'm surprised that more people haven't brought that up. It's an interesting point. And then finally, Justin wrote, further proof of IP address not equaling your physical address. It was actually at the top of our subreddit today. It's a story from Fusion. Justin says, I came across the article posted today about many people who are getting harassed and having trouble with law enforcement because people are using services to tie an IP address to a physical location, and sometimes it's not the same location. One 80-year-old lady has more than 6 million IP addresses tied to her physical address because of the way a default in a database was set up. And yeah, I read the story on Fusion. It's fascinating. There's lots of different case studies about this. But essentially back in 2002, when a digital mapping company called MaxMind was set up, they pointed unresolved IP addresses from the United States, where all they knew was like, okay, we know it's in the US, but we don't know where. They pointed up to the geographical center of the country, which happens to be in northern Kansas. They also decided to round off the coordinates to make it simpler to store, maybe saving a few bits. I don't know why they did it, but when they rounded it off, that moved it from the exact geographical center 2 hours away to the front yard of Ms. Joyce Taylor's house. And so people who didn't realize that this was just a default location would look up this IP address in a MaxMind-powered database, see that it was located in central Kansas or northern Kansas, and then assume that that's where that IP address was located. 5,000 companies rely on MaxMind's IP mapping information. So poor thing has happened a lot. Now, because of this Fusion article, MaxMind has been made aware of this. They say we were not aware this was happening, and they have changed the default location to not be in her front yard. And it may take weeks to months for everybody to update their databases. But
I grew up in Kansas, and I hope they didn't change it to my front yard.
Right. No, they actually said they've changed. There were two different locations that were having problems. They changed both of them to be in the middles of bodies of water, so that it would be fairly clear, we hope, that it wasn't a person's house.
Good.
It's in the middle of a lake. But yeah, IP address, not a location.
I'm back.
Well, this was a great conversation, you guys. Thank you so much. Travis Falstad, where can folks find more about you and what you're up to?
I keep all my info on my personal website. It's travisfalstad.com.
So go there. I know you're on Twitter as well. I don't know if you want to push people there, but
Absolutely. It's at @tfalstad.
Allison Sheridan, of course, host of the NosillaCast podcast and more at podfeet.com. What you been up to lately?
Well, I had a really interesting interview this last week on my show I call Chit Chat Across the Pond. It was with Greg Scown from Smile, the makers of Text Expander. There's been a bit of a kerfuffle about their new policies on their products, and the internet's kind of a Twitter about it, as you could say. And it was a very interesting interview. He is not a sponsor of my show, which allowed me to push pretty hard on him and ask him some pretty tough questions. And there's been probably more comments on this post than almost anything I've ever done. So if you want to go check that out, it's over at podfeet.com, and you can follow me on Twitter at podfeet.
Yeah, with internet anger being what it is, the fact that he was willing to come on and talk to you about it is to his credit, I think. Oh,
yeah. A lot of people said that, if nothing else, good on you for coming to the party. And he knew ahead of time what I was going to ask him, so.
Good for him. Thank you, folks, for supporting the show. dailytechnewsshow.com/support is the place to go if you would like to be one of those people. If you're already supporting us, thank you so much for making it possible to have these conversations and bring you the news. We're constantly experimenting with different content, new ways of delivering you the content, and we want to do even more. The more of you that support us, the better we can do. dailytechnewsshow.com/support provides several different ways to support the show. An ongoing way is the Patreon at patreon.com/DTNS. We also have a store with t-shirts. A DTNS t-shirt looks nice on people. I've seen them in real life, so I can attest to that. And of course, just telling people about the show. Going to iTunes and leaving a review or whatever podcatcher you use helps more people discover the show. So just go tell someone that, hey, I think you might like dailytechnewsshow.com. Our email address is feedback@dailytechnewsshow.com. You can give us a call, 512-59-DAILY. It's 593-2459. Catch the show live Monday through Friday, 4:30 p.m. Eastern at alphageekradio.com and diamondclub.tv. And visit our website, dailytechnewsshow.com. Back tomorrow with Brian Brushwood. Talk to you then.
This show is part of the Frog Pants Network. Get more at frogpants.com.
Diamond Club hopes you have enjoyed this program.
Allison, are you there?
So I just suddenly had a screen that said, you've been disconnected because of an authentication error.
The DMCA got you.
Exactly. I bet you. And I just hit OK, and then and then it reconnected.
It reconnected?
Yeah, I've never seen that before.
I bet it was Text Expander.
Yeah, exactly. Luckily, I wasn't talking. It worked out okay, right? They'll never know.
Yeah, no, I didn't notice till I saw your note in the chat there. And Travis, that was fantastic. Thank you so much.
Excellent. Thank you very much. I am taking a sigh of relief now.
My favorite part was watching the blanket moving behind you, trying to figure out what was under it.
Oh, it's a cat.
Yeah.
No, it's funny, and I didn't realize this would happen, but I really tried to focus. I kept zoning out when you're reading the headlines because I felt like I was watching the show, which I've done so many times. So I felt and I kept wanting to take notes like I normally do, but I'm like, no, wait, this is live. Yeah, so.
If you'll notice, that happened to me once where you saw Tom just waiting for me to answer. I was like, wow, it's really interesting what he's talking about. Oh, I'm on the show.
Yes. Yeah. So.
Well, no, you were excellent with the analysis, so thank you so much.
Awesome.
You guys got to stop taking me so seriously.
Show titles?
Yeah.
Oh, I saw a good one. Somebody put in, where is that?
Well, if you go to showbot.tv, it collects them all from the chat room.
And the top right now is...
Oregon. It's the one I saw go by.
Is it Oregon? Well, the one at the top is...
Blown up organs.
Blown up. Wait, organs? Like human organs?
Well, yeah, Tom said something about blowing up organs.
Blown up organs. Well, the top is VR, huh? Good God,
I'm zooming in, but yes. It's helpful of people's organs.
Pepper pot bot. It's kind of odd.
Yeah.
Why people won't shut up about VR. Lots of leakage in the pipeline.
I kind of like why people won't shut up about VR.
That's pretty good. I mean, it's very cogent to
it ties into a more common reaction than I expected with people like pulling back for a second. Generally, when something starts to get covered a lot, you always get a few people like, I'm tired of hearing about whatever it is, right? Because it's getting covered more than it used to. And we've been through that. Buzz Out Loud used to get complaints that we covered Microsoft too much. Then we covered Apple too much. Then we covered smartphones too much.
I was kind of glad to hear you got it about VR, though, because I always hear you apologizing for too much Apple. And, of course, you could talk about Apple all day, and I won't get bored.
And honestly, we're starting to get the opposite reaction of, like, you guys don't like Apple. You don't cover them enough. So I'm like, oh, that one's receding now. And now VR and bots and AI are taking over as the new heavily covered things.
I forgot to work in that tweet from Tim on Twitter.
Shoot.
Yeah.
I almost mentioned it at one point, too.
Yeah, I loved that when I saw that. That was pretty hilarious.
Now I'm forgetting, what did he say?
He said,
I know it's good for. It's filling up podcasts.
Yeah.
Is it good for more than that? Yes.
Yeah.
I think so I forgot to ask you, Allison, has your position moved on this?
It's moved in that I'm thinking about VR as being beyond putting a headset on.
Okay.
That putting a headset on is a way of viewing virtual reality.
Right.
But you could still have virtual reality that is that you view another way.
Well, and I didn't want to get too, I tried to stay really, benign or neutral, but I've heard a lot of people talk about VR the way I remember music publicists would call me and talk about bands. And so it's just like, oh, wow, I know this band is probably very similar to the last band that you called about, but I'm sure it's different. And, and she would have read the bio and maybe written the bio and maybe done one interview, but that was it. And, and I hear people talking about VR that way and not understanding the nuance that there's distribution, And I didn't want to bring it up too much in the weeds, but if anybody's familiar with the business model canvas, that talks about distribution, economies of scale, marketing, channels, and all that. And VR affects every one of those, or those have been affected since VR's last appearance. So anyway, yeah, I'm clearly primed to talk about this topic.
Yeah, it's great. I still want to put together a virtual reality special. I know Aaron Carson from Tech Republic, who covers the VR beat, is excited about that too. So I'll be in touch.
Awesome. Thank you.
We got a couple other people out there that are interested in that.
Stuart Chaffee would sure be good for that if he...
Well, we're going to have Stuart on in May.
Oh, are you? Good.
What day is it, Roger? May 11th, I think?
11th. It's a Wednesday.
Excellent.
Yep, 11th.
I would be so eager. I'll tune in. I would be so eager to see how he reacts to... because Allison, you've been pushing that a lot. And I think, it's a great point. And I did watch that whole episode.
Wasn't that crazy? That could have been today, except for the graphics and it is the computing and the miniaturization that has changed. It's not any of the concepts. He saw that future. He's sort of like the opposite of me. He openly mocked me on my show. He's just like, he didn't technically call me an idiot.
Yeah.
It was close to it.
It reminds me a little bit of Star Trek: The Next Generation. I'm sure I'm not the first person to bring that up, but when I think about touch screens, when I think about so many, replicator and 3D printing, when I think about so many of the things that the writers just kind of thought of and extended, that are now common occurrence, and I kept pulling back because a lot of the stuff that I wanted to say, I actually heard on this show, so. Anyway.
That's fine. People don't listen to every one of them.
Okay.
See, here's where you make another great point is on Next Generation. What was it? Rises 7, whatever the episode I think was called The Game, where they all wear the headset and it had the game and they were zoning into it. That is what VR looks like to me.
Oh, absolutely.
No, the VR should have been the holodeck. I think that's what everyone wants.
Yeah. That's augmented reality, though, really.
It is and it isn't, though. It is and it isn't, because...
Well, I guess it's not, because it's not out in the real world. You're right.
It's not out in the real world, and what you see is literally a computer-generated fiction.
I believe... Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
Just saying, through the creative use of force fields, you get impacted by things like a wall that's essentially just a hologram. And so you get the sensation that you are in this other reality, even though you're not.
Right.
Well, it's. I think that when a character left the holodeck because of a glitch or whatever, that to me is augmented reality.
Yeah.
But I'm supposed to see a demo in a couple of weeks from a company that's using sound waves to make you feel like you're touching a hard surface. We'll see. It sounds like vaporware to me, but we'll see.
Yeah, I've read a couple of articles about maybe the same company, and there may be more than one working on it, trying to use that as sort of a haptic, where you get some resistance. I can't imagine it would be able to mimic hardwood, but I could see where it could provide texture.
Yeah, without blowing out your eardrums.
Yeah. That's kind of cool. The idea of that, the texture.
Yeah. A little bit of resistance, because that's one of the things in the reviews of Oculus and HTC Vive particularly, is that the Vive gets some nice points for having the independent controllers so that you feel more like you're interacting, but neither one of them really allow you to like reach out and grab something, right? Or push against something.
Okay.
So that kind of technology that Travis is mentioning could suddenly provide a little bit of a simulation, not a replacement, obviously, but a simulation of the real world, so that, you know, a bullet whipping by could actually, you know, make your hair flip or whatever.
I wonder.
Well,
I thought it would be fun to do a boxing simulator where you, during halfway through the demo, you punch the person in the face.
Real fun, depending on which side of that demo you're on.
Yes.
I mean, ultimately, I think the best way to go with VR is kind of what they did in the Matrix. You just literally hook into your spinal cord, and then whatever, you know, neurons that need to get transmitted to your brain to give it the perception that, oh, I'm in New York City, or I'm, you know, in a giant white space with lots of guns suddenly, or I'm learning kung fu. Although,
that's why Magic Leap is so secretive. That's what they're going to do. They're just big Matrix tanks.
Well, I was wondering, this is the one question that was never really answered, is, so Neo learned Kung Fu in the Matrix. Would he be able to, like, whip out those skills once he's out of it?
Oh.
Like, is it still in his head?
Is it in his head, or is it in the Matrix?
Wouldn't you not have the muscle memory? Or would you never have had it, right? Yeah.
Well, you would know it, and you would have to train your body. But you would, it's like knowing how to handwrite. Like, my handwriting's crappy now, like, since I learned it in second grade. But I know what proper handwriting should look like and how I should do it. So I will have to, you know, I'll have to retrain my nerve bundles in my hand and my forearm to go through that same motion. But, you know, that's different than not having, you know, any memory of the skill.
Wait, here you go, Roger. AR in a headset, you're writing by hand, you're trying to emulate exactly what you're seeing on screen, and that sound thing does stuff to your head when you don't do it right.
See, you know what? Some 70-year-old guy says, take off the headset, here's a pencil, here's a sheet of paper.
And I'll smack you when you don't do it right.
But you can't update content automatically to the sheet of paper. That's all I can think of. But, yeah.
It's called your memory, photographic memory.
You know, can I make one last point that I forgot?
Sure.
Yeah. And this is actually the bulk of the research I did, so I look down and see this piece of paper. I'm a little bit sad. But the second machine age, I'll never say his name, but MIT's Eric Bernjolfsson.
Okay.
And I think I heard that on this show, actually. But he describes something called GPT, that are general purpose technologies that cut across multiple sectors of the economy, which I think VR can arguably do that. But the point he makes is that these always need complements, and his quote is, coming up with these can take years or decades, and this creates lag in between the introduction of technology and the realization of its benefits. And that's where I would say all of those other game engines and internet access and everything are the complementary technologies that support each other. So,
well, we hovered around that point. You're right. Like, you know, your example of phones, you know, being introduced and taking a while before we actually started realizing that you could use them for Tinder and other things is good. So yeah, I don't feel like we missed that point entirely, but yeah, that's well made.
Good. Yeah, I have OkCupid to thank for my girlfriend, so these technologies have certainly impacted my life. Yeah.
So we get spam posts on the blog all the time, and WordPress does a great job of catching them. It's always amusing to me what types of spam posts are trying to fool me and get me to approve them. This one, the text reads, "Hi there, friends. How is the whole thing? And what you want to say regarding this paragraph?" Which is entertaining enough, but the title, the author is Star Trek Timelines Dilithium.
Wow, that's fantastic.
If they knew you'd read it.
Maybe that's just future speak.
Yeah, maybe.
They're trying to contact you from the future.
Yeah. Maybe they're paying me in the future for that.
TVIS, my girlfriend is. Oh, TV is my girlfriend. That's how it's pronounced. Is asking questions about getting podcast transcribed for the deaf. So expensive is the problem.
Yeah.
Doesn't it seem that if I can talk to my Mac and have it transcribe what I say, and I can do speech to text on my Mac, and I can pipe audio out of my Mac, shouldn't I be able to pipe it out, turn around, and send it back in? I have yet to be able to figure out how to do that, but I'm thinking between Loopback and Audio Hijack, I should be able to get this to work.
Or use a second computer.
Yeah, you could use a second computer. That would just obviate it. But the trend. I mean, YouTube does speech to text captions. They're just not very good.
Yeah.
You know, human transcribers aren't that good either. I used to remember all the closed captioning that came after Call for Help, because they would close caption for international broadcast. It's like, whoa, because they would send us the transcripts to correct anything, because oftentimes the transcriber had no idea what we were talking about and could only guess at all the words we were using. And so
we just went to the CSUN Persons with Disabilities Expo, and Steve's posted a video on podfeed.com of a telephone service for not the deaf, but for people who are real hard of hearing. So for the elderly and somewhat hard of hearing. And it's this crazy thing. You make the phone call, and it connects to a service where a human is listening and real time transcribing what they're hearing. So a human is listening to the phone call and typing it at the exact same time.
Wow.
The guy said, yeah, these people are weird as heck.
I actually interviewed for a job doing something like that for Sprint in Austin. I didn't get the job. I don't think my typing was fast enough.
Yeah, can you imagine, though? You'd have to be using both sides of your brain at the same time.
Yeah.
I mean...
All right, well, I'm out of the post, so the show is up. It's published. Thanks, everybody, for watching and listening, and we will see you tomorrow.
Bye.
Thank you.